Hey, this is Zach Log the Great, and we are returning for another tour of my own library. Um, as I said, someone asked for this a while ago, and I have already done one video, but there's a good bit of it. So what we're looking at right now is primarily my fiction collection. Nonfiction is on another shelf. There's less of it. Um, but yeah, this is my library. Um, and I thought we could, start from the beginning, go over it in a little more detail. Before we get to that, there was 2 points I was going to say. One thing that influenced my reading a good bit, and I didn't really plan it. It just kind of happened. Um, was a lot of what I read was determined by what was in the public library and what was at used bookstores. And I honestly kind of think that was good. I was a little less influenced by current fashion than if I had been buying books new, because what's in the bookstore, what's being published now is what the publishers want to sell you. Whereas what's in a library and a used bookstore is, kind of a older, a more complete record. Anyway, also, as you can see, if you're looking at the titles or looking at the authors, there's a lot of science fiction and fantasy. If I'm reading just for fun, I'm reading science fiction and fantasy. So, I guess we can start at the beginning. I am a bit of a nerd, and so these are in alphabetical order by author. And as you can see, the first person that I have several books by is Douglas Adams, British satirical science fiction writer, very funny and very smart. Can't really endorse his worldview because he was an atheist, but I suspect he's learned better now. Anyway, let's see. I've also got the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri. I've read through the whole thing at least once, possibly twice, and I've read the Inferno one or two more times. I need to go back and read Purgatory again at least. Next person I have several by is, you can see, Isaac Asimov. I have a number written by him, and I have several more edited by him and some friends. Having learned more about him, having learned more about the kinds of things he represents, I'm not entirely happy about that. That his thinking was such an influence on me. But anyway, and that's an interesting thing. Like, you cannot disentangle how a particular person has influenced you, particularly, especially if you read them when you were relatively young. It just becomes a part of you, for better or for worse. Uh, which is why the Bible tells us to guard our hearts. I need to pay more attention to that. Anyway, let's see. What else? A Man for All Seasons, a very interesting play about Henry VIII and some people who weren't entirely happy with his takeover of the church. I have one of the original Tarzan books by Edgar Rice Burroughs. If you have not read them, if you think, oh, I know what Tarzan is, if you haven't read the books, you don't actually know Tarzan. You've seen like probably third or fourth generation copies. Not the same person at all. And I would strongly encourage you to go ahead and to go back and read some of the original books. And if you can take an ebook, they're available for free. I think a lot of them on Gutenberg. So they're either free or very cheap. Definitely worth it. This shelf is actually the shelf I deliberately put behind me for my videos, and I went over the contents of these two shelves the first time I did the first library tour video I did. So don't need to go back to that. Marion Zimmer Bradley. Whew. Yeah, that's a horrifying person, and another person I regret had some degree of influence on my thinking by reading their fiction. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a book called The Last Closet, I believe is the title, by her daughter, about what growing up, being raised by Marion Zimmer Bradley was like. Let's see. Jim Butcher, The Dresden Files. I've read all of the novels so far. I have a smattering of them myself. I've actually done discussion videos on a few of them. So if you're interested, you can look those up with my friend Chris, and also with Chris, and also with my friend Harry Selden. Octavia Butler, read several of hers. Generally pretty interesting. I started reading hers actually because I read stuff by Orson Scott Card, and he kind of recommended her. Orson Scott Card, Ender's Game. Read that in junior high, I guess. Junior high school. And yes, very fascinating author. Although it took me a while to notice this. There is a rule for Orson Scott Card books. Okay, if Orson Scott Card starts a new series, you read the first book. You read the first two books, sometimes the first three, and then you stop there because it doesn't get any better. It kind of goes downhill after two or three books. It kind of goes downhill, and it's pretty consistent. So if you see a series by Orson Scott Card, read the first two books, sometimes the first three, and then stop. It doesn't matter what questions are left unanswered. It's not going to get better. Let's see. Here, we'll pan down. The Hunting of the Snark by Lewis Carroll. Don Quixote. Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes. Very large book. I read that one summer a few years back. In translation, but unabridged, but in translation. I don't speak, I don't understand medieval Spanish well enough to read that in the original. But G.K. Chesterton. I've got a few of his here. I have a few of his nonfiction books as well. Cannot sufficiently recommend him. Let's see. Yeah. And you know what? I think that will be it for our library tour today. And I'll come back to it and pick it up somewhere around here next time. In another month or so. We'll see. Anyway. So that is a little bit more about me, about my books, and about my life story, and my philosophy. Hope you found this interesting, and God be with you.